Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Fladlien, and I'm looking at chat too, which is always fun. One of the best parts of a webinar, whether it's a one-to-one or one-to-many situation, is interaction. It's not quite as good as being nose-to-nose, toes-to-toes, but it's the next best thing. So I'm introducing myself. It would be rude of you not to introduce yourself in return. So say hi, hello, howdy. Good on you, mate. If you're from Australia, I don't know if we got any international attorneys and lawyers in here. Probably not, but welcome nonetheless. Excellent. Ooh, this is good. This always makes me happy. We have a lot of people on here. Normally, by the way, so qualifier, you can Google me and look at all this stuff later if you want to, but Entrepreneur Magazine wrote an article about me that says I'm the $100 million man. So who am I to disagree with that? If it's in the news, it has to be true, right? But in this case, it actually is true. I have sold products, services, and business to business, business to consumers, software, you name it. If it was worth selling and it was ethical, I sold it. And so I have had a lot of results on webinars. But I will tell you, most of my webinars are way smaller than the webinar we're all on right now. It's not so much quantity that you want to focus on, but it's more quality. So like a really good client to you, just go ahead and share this with me if you feel comfortable. Like, what are they worth, economically speaking? Now, I know the value you provide to them far exceeds that worth, but a traditionally newly acquired client, on average, what's that worth to you? I would say you're in the high transaction business, if I had to guess correctly. So you're not, a client isn't worth $19.95 because they bought something off an infomercial, right? They run into the thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, and sometimes even hundreds of thousands, depending on where you're at, who you serve, and what audiences that you're working with, right? Is that fair to say, by the way? Just go ahead and give me a thumbs up if no other reason, just to make sure we're all on the right page.
Yeah,
so you can do a lot with a little.
Most people on here, their average widgets in the several $1,000s for the.
Oh, cool. Money. Thank you, Seth. Yeah, and I remember I have limited experience with lawyers other than paying lots of money to our business lawyers. For good reason, mind you, right? But thank God I've never been in litigation. I've never been in courts. I've never been on that side of things. But my mom's fiance, he got hurt in a worker-related suit and ended up with like a six-figure settlement. So, and then there was on contingency. And so we don't need a lot to do a lot, okay? That's the first thing I want you to write down, is it doesn't take a lot to do a lot. A lot of us, who we study from and who we learn from, are like the Van Goghs of their industry. They are the ones that have figured it all out, and 15 years later, they're showing you what they know, and you're comparing yourselves to somebody who's already been in that journey. So like in my field, Gary Vaynerchuk is very famous, and he's very popular. And how did Gary V get started? Does anybody know the answer to that? It's a fascinating story. Yeah, he was a low-level employee in his dad's wine store, and he was posting really ugly, not produced at all, YouTube videos. And I don't know what he commands now for a keynote, but it is like 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is, just probably even more, right? And I've worked with a lot of people who've worked with Gary, but that's where he started. And, you know, Tony Robbins, who I've done webinars for, he started selling seminar tickets to a personal development seminar by Jim Rohn. And then he started doing like phobia cures on Canadian television. And, you know, now, of course, he's famous and everybody forgets his humble beginnings. So most of you, if you watch webinars that I do, or even that Bill does, or that a lot of other people do, you're going to say, wow, these guys have really got it dialed together, and I want to be like them. And I would suggest that you don't. Try that, right? Let's not learn how to fly before we learn how to walk. And so for most of you, in your field and in your industry, you are in the land of the blind, meaning that if you have one eye slightly open with cataracts, both nearsighted and farsighted, you can still see further and farther than everybody else in your local or whatever geographic or however you measure your field of potential people you can serve and other people who are trying to serve them alongside you, right? So that's how I would look at this thing. So let's start very simple. Let me tell you a quick story. The biggest client that I ever worked with for webinars was a small little tiny company that you may have just heard of recently called Zoom. So we are on Zoom. By the way, I like the joke. It's my Midwestern Iowa kind of charm, I would say, and how I look at these things. But we're all on Zoom right now. So in February of 2019, Zoom brought me in to train their webinar users on how to better use webinars, because Zoom's line of thought was if more of them use my webinar platform, then they will be more valuable to us as clients. And so if you don't know, Zoom IPO'd in April. And even though nobody had heard of them last year, because this is pre-quarantine, they IPO'd for $22 billion on the day that they opened up. So a couple months before IPO, they had little Jason Fladlien and me come in and help train them. And it was awesome. It was great. But let me tell you some of the things that happened during that time. The first thing is, this is a big tech company now worth actually probably closer to $50 billion. I don't know. I don't invest. I'm not in the stock market. It's way beyond my realm of expertise. I have a wealth advisor, like he helps me manage my funds and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know anything about the market. I don't watch it at all. But Zoom sends out an email promoting me to their audience saying, hey, come on to this webinar. And the email on a mobile device isn't mobile friendly. Interesting. Huh. So here's a company now worth about 60 billion, 50 billion, and what's a couple $1 billion one way or another, right? Here's a company that comes on and they get that wrong, okay? That's the first issue. Second issue is they ask for too much too soon. So two issues, actually. They say, come to this webinar with Jason, and they have 25 form fields that you have to fill out. Like blood type, grandmother's maiden name. I'm joking, of course, to prove a point here. But two issues with that. One is you can ask for that information, but it's too much to ask too soon. We want to date before we marry, right? But the second issue with this is they already had the information in their database, so it was redundant. So that was another issue and another challenge, okay? We get on the webinar, and this is really, I love this in life, and this will happen to you at some point in time or another. But I'm doing this thing, and I'm training, and I'm teaching, and Bill referenced this same technique when we did the interview just the other week. We went 2.5 hours. So we did like a 2-hour podcast style interview. And most people tell you to keep podcasts 20 to 30 minutes long, right? But my philosophy is if we're in the groove, if we're in state, if we're rocking and rolling, if things are happening and power is going on, why stop it? Okay. On a webinar, same concept. Okay. Whether you're doing them one-to-one or one-to-many, it doesn't matter. If somebody's asking you the right questions and you can be of service and you have nowhere else to be or nothing else that's more important in the moment, then you should still be of service. There is no such thing as this time limit of, well, they got 30 minutes and then if they die afterwards, they die afterwards, but I'm going to go golf, right? It's like, no, if you want to be of service, you have to be in service, and to be in service, you have to be willing to go the extra mile, because for most people, this isn't like minor level stuff that they're making a decision on. Would you agree with that? For most of the people that you talk to or that you see, there's a lot riding on it for them, on how they make their decision and what could happen both positively and negatively. And so one of your greatest advantages is just the unwillingness to stop serving somebody. It's a great attitude to have in life too, but it's definitely a very lucrative attitude to have in your practice. So I get on Zoom and I'm telling this concept because this is how I discovered this way, way long ago when I was making just a little bit of money online. I'd get on and do a webinar. I had about 100 people on it, and I was selling like $1,000 product at the time. Product's not important, right? I do my whole presentation. I have my slide deck. I have every little thing structured out. I get to about 75 minutes in. I'm out of material, but I'm not out of attention. There are still a whole bunch of people that are interacting with me on this webinar. And I'm like, cool. They seem to want to know more to help them make a decision that's right for them. That doesn't necessarily mean a decision where they pay me money. It just means a decision that is best for them, which is what I want for them. And hopefully, if I did my job right, I have the right people. So paying me money would be better than paying it to some other person who I don't know what they're going to do with, or not pay any amount of money and still be stuck in the same situation that they're in, right? So that's my philosophy. So I'm seeing this. So I said, okay, there's an hour, and I'm selling like $1,000 product. I go for another hour because there's interaction, there's feedback, there's insight, and I get 1 or 2 more sales in 1 hour. Like I fought tooth and nail to pick up those sales. But there's still like 70, 80 people on this webinar, and they're still active, and they're still asking questions. So I go for another hour, and I pick up 1 or 2 other sales. And then, Sean, I'm going to answer your question. Thank you for asking it, by the way. The third hour of questions. So I had a 75-minute webinar followed up by 3 hours of off the script, nose to nose, heart to heart talking and serving. And we doubled or tripled ourselves or something ridiculous like that. And when I say the royal we back then, it was me. I was little old Jason Fladlien, right? So I'm telling this story on the Zoom training. And we get to the scheduled end of the Zoom training, which was at like 12:15 p.m. And we still have 730 people on the call. And they're all ravenously excited and jazzed up and enthusiastic to continue. And so am I, because I know if I keep serving, I'm going to be taken care of. And the guy hosting the Zoom from Zoom, worked with Zoom, said, okay, time to go, shut it down, bye. Literally after I told this story. And, my business partner, Will, texted me, what happened? I said, well, look at the time, Will, it was lunchtime. They had to break for lunch, because that's how these big tech companies go. Now, I bring this up to you for one very important reason. There was so many things that were broken, didn't do right in their business, and I'm not one to critique, because if you look at my backstage, it's all broken as well. Amazon's the biggest company in the world. They have more things broken than they seem to have right, and that seems to work for them. So when you're starting, just do the simplest, easiest things you can do to move forward, because your competition is going to get into overwhelm and try to do everything perfect and end up not doing anything. So that's the big lesson. If I had to put it on a bumper sticker, that's what I'm telling you today. The best way to get started is to just get started. Break some eggs to make some omelets. Now, Sean asked this really great question, and I love it. So wouldn't it be impossible to do a webinar for current clients of a law firm, given that disclosure or the very fact that they are all current clients violates attorney-client confidentiality? You are absolutely right. You should never do something that will violate client confidentiality. But if there's a way to do secure webinars, and I know that there is, that are private in one-to-one with all the proper disclosures and everything filled out, that's okay. Because maybe you want to start one-to-one in a very safe and quiet environment before you go one-to-few and then one-to-many. But there are plenty of situations that are purely knowledge-focused. Okay, so let me give you the counter to that, Sean, something to consider and chew on. I had my dentist locally here, and she was married to the dentist. She was kind of like the office, the receptionist, everything. She really ran the business. He just drilled on the teeth, right? And she was trying everything she could to grow this business. And we looked at all the marketing in the local area, and it was all come in. We're cheap. First thing's free. Come do business with us. And I call this selfish advertising, okay? Because it's all about you. It's not about your prospect or your client. So instead, I had suggested to her to create what we call the consumer awareness guide and talk about how different, how the whole process is done, right? This is how different dentists decide to run their practices to serve their clients. Here's some of the things that are not necessarily in those patients' best interests. They're more in the best interest of the dentist. And these are all the things that she rallies against, that she hates. She's like, yeah, all these big chains, what they do is they try to not just extract teeth, but extract as much money from somebody. They recommend procedures that are not necessary, and on and on and on. She went for an hour and a half. It was fantastic, right? She was buying lunch. It was free to me, and I might make some money, so I just let her go. And so I explained to her, write your philosophy out in the form of education, of how would you know if these procedures are necessary or unnecessary, and how is it in certain situations in the industry are set up to not be pro-consumer, that if the consumer just knew more about it, they could make better decisions. And then I said, you create that educational piece. Now here's what will happen. Automatically, because you are the one informing the person in advance of them needing you, they will want you more, because everybody else is just trying to cram down a sales pitch down their throat, and you are being of service. So you talk about, here's how the industry works in general. Here's why we decided to do it differently than the industry standard. Here is the reasons why this would make sense for you if you're this person, or wouldn't make sense for you if you're not this person. Because we didn't design our practice to cater to everybody. We specifically specialize in this. And even though most of the industry likes to do it this way, here's why we're different, and here's how we chose to be different. And this could be helpful to you. It couldn't be helpful to you. Now, everybody's going to like you more no matter what, because you help them first before you ask for anything in return. You empowered them to make a better decision. But the other thing that they're going to notice as well is, given a decision between you, somebody that they just bonded with, or complete strangers, most people are going to want to go with you because you're convenient, you're right there, they know what they're getting, and you've built trust in advance, all right? So this is no different than the age-old model of a free consultation. It isn't. Don't mistake the media for the marketing. The webinar is just the media. Online is just a new horse and buggy, right? It's no different. What matters is one person connecting with another person. That's the difference. We just do it now virtually. And so if we can connect virtually and help somebody understand their issue to make a better decision, we will win that business, because in every market we play in, 98% of the service providers do not do what I just described. They only do one of two things. They get by on location, which virtually kind of levels the playing field a lot, doesn't it? Or they get by on cheapest price. And I'm here to assert to you, and you tell me how this lands with you, that it's hard to serve somebody with what they need if you're limited by being cheap, right? It's like, man, we would have gave you the cancer drug that would have cured you, but it was like $150. Instead, we'll give you this over-the-counter stuff for $199. It'll make you feel better. It won't do anything else for you, though, but it's really cheap, right? So I think it's hard for you to serve the best audience if you focus solely on price. And so what people do, and this is an issue, is they do bait and switch marketing. They say, yeah, get started for as little as blank. And then when you get in there, you walk away realizing you got to donate a kidney just to do business with that person when they start piling it on and adding it on and doing this and doing that. And listen, I'm not here to judge. You do the best you can with what you have. I'm just here to suggest that you should focus on what can I do to improve myself so I can be a better version of myself to my market. And I feel like you have an obligation, if you truly care about your clients, to make that happen. So the last thing I'll say on this subject for now, because obviously there's a million more things we could discuss on this subject. But again, the tech is less important than the touch. So the tech is less important than the touch. So write that down. I want you to do worse than what Zoom did. I want you to send out emails that are broken. I want you to not worry too much about if you got this part of the procedure right or if you didn't. I don't want you to over-optimize for something or major in a minor thing, right? I want you to make it as easy while still making it all legal, right? And ethical. I want you to make it as easy as possible for somebody who needs your help to be able to connect with you. And I'm here to tell you, it doesn't matter what the font size is in your email. It doesn't matter if your branding is correct inside of the Zoom account or whatever software that you use. It doesn't matter if your landing page that you have somebody register with is beautiful or if it's ugly. Right now, branding goes out the window and help comes in the window. It's like when Lee Iacocca had to turn around Chrysler. That's when they threw away all this institutional advertising in this pretty three-colored trifold brochure style, and he got on and he talked heart to heart, and he saved the company that way, right? We are in a similar time as a whole industry, and that's when direct heart-to-heart connection, that's when it makes sense the most. And then guess what happens when you do that? The rest of the stuff seems to fall in place. Pretty soon you'll get a little bit better at this tech. Pretty soon you'll get a little bit better at that. Or let me tell you this. You can outsource all of those things. What you can't outsource is the care and the expertise that you bring to the market. But you can outsource to 1,000 other people on Fiverr or on Upwork or anywhere else, and they can set up all that other stuff for you. But I'm here to tell you, it doesn't really matter. You can go on YouTube and search for free and find 1,000 videos in 5 minutes that can show you how to set that up. What's missing is the connection and the expertise and the availability for the other person to connect, to benefit from that expertise. So when I think webinars, that's what I'm thinking. And it doesn't matter to me if it's me and one other person or me and 3 other people or me and 3,000 other people. That's what we're here to do. And this is how we show up. And as a result, we win the game of capitalism as it's supposed to be played, by outvaluing and capitalizing on our ability to create more value than we get in exchange and compensation. So there you go.